With school coming to a close, a new garden in full bloom, and a house to run, spring is a hectic time. And though I often find myself scrambling to get it all done, I am placing a lot of emphasis on simplifying my life. And I want to share with you some of the ways I'm simplifying my spring homemaking. Lately, everything I do feels like it creates another obstacle. And yes, I do think that is part of life, but I also think this boils down to way too much clutter. And it's this clutter, as you'll see here in a second, that gets in the way and how I ended up breaking one of my favorite bowls. And in the process, I was also swinging that knife around, but having all this stuff in the way and in my hands created a situation for things to be broken. And in this case, a real possibility to injure myself with that knife. It actually wasn't quite as bad from my perspective as it looked from the cameras, but either way, I'm not really a fan of swinging a knife around like that or breaking my things. And I have come back to time and time again that when more obstacles are created, the one thing to do is to reduce the clutter. And now I'm not saying that making a fruit salad is going to solve the problems in your life, but one of the areas where my home has the most clutter is in the kitchen, because I have a lot of food sitting around. I like to have decorative bowls and flowers. And so one helpful way for me to reduce clutter right now in my life, and especially in spring as there's more and more fresh produce coming in, is to use that stuff as quickly as I can. Often when I hear people talk about reducing clutter, what they're talking about is things that are important. Yes, of course, like reducing toy clutter and book clutter and going through your clothes. But often I think we forget about the clutter that's created out of necessity in our homes. So using up this fruit and making a fruit salad was a way for me to clear a bunch of bowls off my counter. It was a way for me to use up food that was about to go bad and to provide something healthy for my family. For everyone, this type of decluttering might look different, but this could look like a pantry challenge, using the food that you have in your pantry to reduce clutter in your pantry, using up bowls of fruit that are sitting on your counter, using up what's about to expire in your fridge, because not only are you making the most out of your money and your resources, you are also creating space. When we create space, we allow for new things to come in, and I don't mean new clutter. Creating space welcomes a breath of fresh air, a little more time, fewer obstacles. And in this case, it gave me an opportunity to use herbs from my garden. I'm always talking about this, but I'm always looking for reasons to go out into my garden. And so here I'm adding a little bit of basil and fresh mint into my fruit salad. So I'm clearing out the clutter. I'm making something healthy for my family. I'm getting a little creative in the kitchen, and it gives me time to spend in my garden harvesting some of these herbs. And also, as a quick side note, if you really want to step up your fruit salad game, add just a little pinch of salt in there. It is really good. It really brings out those flavors. But what I really want to underscore here is that cleaning out the physical space, especially in places where we spend the most of our time, like the kitchen, also cleans out mental space. It gives us room to breathe and think and be a little bit more creative, because we're not constantly just shifting one bowl to the next counter and this thing to the next space and trying to dig through our pantry. We're actually focusing on the things that we want to do in the kitchen or in any part of our lives. If you've been following along on YouTube over the last few months, you probably know that we expanded our garden, and that's been a whole area of not simplifying, trying to figure out how to work with this new garden that's triple the size of our old one. So one of the things that I'm doing now that our vegetable garden and our kitchen garden is pretty much squared away is I am trying to find a few easy wins. These Greenstalks have been on my back patio, and I had cilantro in one, which was like a total fail, by the way. And then I had peas in another, and the peas are done because now it's too hot. So rather than putting vegetables in here and trying to do something new in them and trying to cultivate this little vertical garden on my patio when I already have this big garden I'm trying to figure out, I'm putting some super easy to grow petunias in the Greenstalks. Because spring inspires newness and a refresh, it's often a time when I see a lot of well-meaning content about doing more in the garden and how to be a better steward of my spring home. But I also just don't have the bandwidth to do more right now, and that's probably going to be true for a long time. So I encourage you, as I'm encouraging myself, to seek out easy wins, to do what needs to be done or to do what you want to do, but in a way that is low maintenance. It doesn't have to be new all the time. It doesn't have to be an experiment all all the time, and it definitely doesn't have to be perfect all the time. What I really like about the Greenstalks is that they are low maintenance, but they're sort of like a twofold. I can put things in them that either grow food or in this case, grow flowers, but they also offer a lot of beauty to my home too, which I do want a beautiful home. I do want those parts of my life. I just don't want to do all of it and work really hard for it every single day. So for the Greenstalk, you just take, it's about a bag of dirt fits in per tier, and you pour it in there. It's important not to compact the soil because you want it to be loose. It'll compact itself as it rains and as you water it. And then you simply plant one plant. In this case, it's one plant per pocket. Depending on what you're planting, you can do up to like 3 in there. But it's a really easy way to have flowers on my patio, and hopefully these will grow and add a ton of color, but it doesn't require a lot of extra work. Now, of course, there is the initial setup of the Greenstalk that does take a little bit of time here. I'm just adding a little fertilizer into this soil because to keep these going well, you will need to fertilize them like you would any other plant. But I've also simplified how I fertilize my garden because I can't manage fertilizing different things at different times. So I use a slow release granular fertilizer. I use Espoma. I'll leave a link for that in the description box below. And I fertilize all my plants once a month. So I know on the first of every month, I have to fertilize everything, and then I don't have to think about it again for another month. So simplifying what I'm growing in my Greenstalks, and even when I'm growing in my vegetable and kitchen garden, I'm only growing things that I know how to grow and that I know I'll use. And then also simplifying the systems in place to take care of that is really helping me pare down what I need to do to run my spring home. I think for a lot of people across the board, homemaker, not a homemaker, mom, not a mom, one of the biggest sources of overwhelm is meals because we have to do it 3 times a day, every single day of our lives. So one of the things I'm doing on my site to help myself and hopefully all of you reduce a little overwhelm is provide meals that take 30 minutes or less. And this gnocchi meal is killer. It's so good. But if you go over to moonandmagnolia.com, there is a section for dinners and you'll see this recipe. You'll see a cheeseburger helper, sloppy joes, lemon chicken, a growing database of dinners that can all be made in under 30 minutes. And what I think is kind of funny about that is I also have this large database of sourdough recipes, which all take a really long time. And I think it's important to strike that balance, right? If you like to do things like long fermented sourdough and those sorts of creative endeavors, you probably don't have time to do that and a 2-hour dinner. So picking one to simplify can help you find the space to do the other things that might take a little bit longer. So here I'm just caramelizing onions in brown butter, and then I'm adding in some fresh garden sage, white wine, a little bit of Dijon mustard, heavy cream, and making a sauce. And then I'm cooking store-bought gnocchi in it. And this is so good. A few hacks for this: if you don't have fresh sage, you can use dried. You just add it in after the cream. I actually didn't have a lot of fresh sage, so I did a little bit of both. And then also, once you put the gnocchi into the sauce, if you feel like it's not thin enough to actually cook the gnocchi, just add about a 1/4 cup of water to it, and that will help cook it. It'll also reduce down, and the gnocchi will soak up that water, so you'll still have a nice, really thick, creamy sauce. And then I am shredding some Parmesan and Gruyere cheese and adding it once it is completely finished. And I had this ready to go on the table in 20 minutes, and that was with filming and moving my camera around. So it'll definitely be under 20 minutes for you. You can find this recipe and more over on my blog at moonandmagnolia.com. I'll leave that link in the description box below. Just a few days ago, I posted a new video on YouTube of making breakfast on a Blackstone. So you can check that out if you want to see how I made a breakfast and a couple tips that I learned along the way. But I'm actually making breakfast on my Blackstone again. And though I know it's a little redundant for YouTube, when I was filming that, I realized that the Blackstone for me is a total game changer for bulk meal prep. So I'm actually making bacon for breakfast, but I'm also making a bunch of pancakes on my Blackstone that I'm going to freeze. So I have them for breakfast over the next couple of weeks as we wind down the school year for my daughter's preschool. Everything's really busy right now with her school schedule. So I need these easy breakfasts. And in just a moment, I'm also going to show you how I bulk meal prepped a bunch of fried rice for us to enjoy for a few days. But what I really want to underscore here is that when it comes to reducing overwhelm, sometimes we have to find new ways to get things done because it is our current ways and our old ways that aren't working. A home is like a living and breathing organism. It changes and its needs change. And that means the systems and tools that we have in place yesterday and today might not work tomorrow. And I should backtrack and say that many of our current and old ways of doing things do work. It's the ones where we start to find that we're running into more obstacles or it's just not working as well as it used to that need to be changed. So for you, this might not look like cooking on an outdoor griddle. It could mean just rethinking the systems you have in place, finding new recipes, working with multiple skillets on your stove at one time. I don't know what that means for you, but I want to encourage you to think new. If we do what we've always done, we get what we've always had. And that may or may not be a bad thing, but if you're looking for a shift or a change, you've got to try something new. So I got a Blackstone for Mother's Day, which is a very Father's Day-like gift, but that's what I wanted. And so what I am doing is I am making some chicken fried rice in bulk for us to have over the weekend because I don't really like to cook a lot on the weekends. This ties into what I was saying in the beginning of the video about reducing clutter. So I'm also using this recipe to use up some stuff that I have. For the marinade, I'm mixing together a little olive oil, salt, the last of my sesame oil, a little bit of soy sauce, some brown sugar, and then also a secret ingredient, a little bit of sherry. Oh, and I'm using white wine vinegar. Usually I'd use rice wine vinegar, but I actually didn't have any rice vinegar. So white wine is a good substitute. And then while I prep the other ingredients, I am just going to let this sit in this little bowl and marinate. This is sort of like a kitchen raid recipe. I'm taking whatever vegetables I have in my fridge and I'm putting them into the fried rice. So I have a half of a leftover onion. I also have some leftover corn that was actually frozen from last year that I preserved. So I'm using that up, and I had some peas from my garden and a little bit, I think like a half a bag of broccoli that I'm adding into the mixture. I actually do get a little overwhelmed sometimes with bulk meal prep because there's a lot of chopping involved and sort of like a lot of moving parts. But I found that when it comes to bulk meal prep and when it comes to cooking outside on a Blackstone or a grill, that prepping all of the ingredients before you start cooking is key. So that way everything's chopped. In this case, all the eggs are mixed. I have the rice ready to go. And speaking of rice, I have this giant bowl of rice that I made. So when I make rice, I make a lot of it because it's just as easy to cook one serving of rice as it is to cook 20 servings of rice. So I just make a big pot of rice, and then in this case I use it for fried rice. I often freeze it so I have it on hand for busy days, but that's another really easy way to reduce a little bit of overwhelm in mealtime prep, is to cook a little bit of extra rice or noodles or something like that. But now that we are outside, I am just putting a little butter on the skillet and I'm getting the chicken and veggies going. And here's the deal. We had, I think, 8 meals of this. We ate a lot of this. It took me 9 minutes to cook on the griddle. So this is a huge game changer for me, and something that I did not even realize was a possibility until I saw someone making breakfast on the Blackstone. I decided I needed one. And when I was making that breakfast for YouTube a few days ago, I realized this kind of changed everything for bulk meal prep for me. But I didn't get a Blackstone because I knew it was going to help me with bulk meal prep. It's something I realized along the way. So pay attention to what's working. Pay attention to what is making your life easier and do more of that. It's really easy to get wrapped up in the daily grind and just do things and not even really pay attention to the outcomes unless they're like really, really good or really, really bad. But sometimes the solution to a lot of overwhelm is found in unexpected places. That is not what I anticipated when I wanted to start cooking on a Blackstone outside. I also want to share a couple secrets to making fried rice. One, your best friend is butter. So get that butter onto your skillet or your griddle and put the rice on it. I added a little bit of sauce to the rice and some water to help break it up. It was really smashed in that bowl, so it was pretty compacted, so I needed a little bit of something to break it up. But the other secret to fried rice is to put the eggs on the rice and use the heat of the rice to cook the eggs. I know a lot of people scramble the eggs separately and then mix it in, but if you put the eggs on the rice and then stir it in and let it cook that way, it turns into this really creamy kind of comfort food that is so good. So right now, the way that I am trying to reduce overwhelm in my spring homemaking is by reducing clutter, finding some easy wins, simplifying meals, and exploring new systems. I hope this has inspired you to think about ways you can do that in your own life and to reduce overwhelm in your day-to-day and as you enjoy spring. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll see you again next time.